1 through 14. And we'll start over there with Eric. Let's see, verse 4 back there, either Lam or Dan. All right, so as you can see, the title of our lesson is called How Wisdom is Increased. And I kind of look at these 14 verses as this is how wisdom increases. This is how we become more wise in our walk with the Lord. We see and festivity or partying. I'll reread verses 1 through 4. A good name is better than a good ointment or perfume, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. It's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, because that is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be happy. The mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. Okay, so we're looking at mourning versus festivity. So we see, first of all, in the first part of verse 1, a good name is better than ointment or perfume. It depends on the translation. Basically, the Hebrew word means literally a nice smelling ointment. So that's why it goes back and forth between ointment and perfume. There's a play on words here, which in the Hebrew, the word Shem means name, and the name perfume, or the word perfume, is Shemen. So you can see how it's kind of a Hebrew wordplay that we don't see, obviously, in the English language. So here's a question. How does a good perfume or ointment affect us? How does it affect us to smell a nice smelling perfume or ointment? Does it have an effect? Peggy? Very pleasurable. Okay, good. Right. It takes us maybe to a memory you've had in the past where you smelled that before. Okay, good. Pleasurable experience. Anyone else? How does perfume affect us? Or just think of nice smells in general, not just perfume. How does it affect us? Brings back memories. Lou? Oh, nice. It's the opposite of decay. It brings back memories of cleanness. Good. Any others? Mark? It's special. Okay. It's not something you'll smell all the time, per se. Good. Bill? Oh. Oh, by the way, it looks good. Jen? Is it July already? Yeah, good. Appreciate that. You know, we talked about a few weeks ago the worship in the tabernacle, and you had the altar of incense, and you had this incense put on there. And one of the things we discussed was, you know, of course, incense represents prayer to God, but also it helps cover up some of the odors that would have been there, the slaughtering of all the animals. So, yeah, it plays several different roles. So, thanks, everybody. So, how is a good name similar? So, we have this perfume. It can be pleasurable. It can bring good memories. How is a good name similar to perfume? That's the parallelism here. A good name. Aaron. Wonderful memories? Okay, good. Other thoughts? Similarity to perfume. Now, it also could bring negative thoughts or memories. How many of you, parents, have had sons? Or still do? I don't mean to say like they no longer exist, you know what I mean? So during your name selecting process, did you sift through various names like, let's see, there's Adolf, there's Nero, Caligula. Boy, those are such nice names, right? No. I mean, popular names, and they've been popular since, you know, the beginning of the first millennium. Paul, David, Matthew, Luke. These are the names that you name your children because, unfortunately, and I mean this sincerely, the name Adolf is forever ruined. The name Adolf was really an honorable name before whatever year Hitler was born, you know, but the name is now despoiled. You wouldn't dream of naming your son that. There's a quote from the time of Nero. A philosopher said, the day will come when men name their sons Paul and their dogs Nero. I disagree because I wouldn't do that to my dog. But you get the point, right? So a good name can be a positive thing, just like perfume can be. Go ahead, Bill. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. You think that's bad? Think about Alvin and the Chipmunks. My middle name. That hasn't declined at all. That's even gotten. What's that? Now, the dinosaur? Marnie the dinosaur, right. So we're all commiserating together, right? So anyway. Then in the same way, it says the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. Now that's very interesting. So it says in a similar way, the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. Now, is this always the case? No, it's not always the case. We talked about a week or two ago about how I've got some relatives who died in very dismal circumstances because of life choices that they made. So it's not necessarily better, but for a person who's honorable, that is to say, who knows Christ, who lives for Christ, the day of one's death would be considered better than the day of one's birth. So why would that be the case? What would make the day of that person's death more significant than the day of his birth? Go ahead, Joe. Memories of that person. Okay, good. Others. Aaron. Oh, nice. You're entering different environment per se. When you're born, you enter the world of sin. When you're born again, or when you die, you enter that. I'll get to you just a minute, okay? Do you have a second grade teacher? Come on. Thank you. Lee, go ahead. Right. Okay. Good. Anyone else? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, okay. Julie. Okay. Solomon? Okay. That could be. Unrighteous? Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, next couple verses does help that, so hold on to that thought. Thank you. Okay, kind of like with what Lee said, when a child is born, you have nothing but potential. That's all you got. I mean, sounds kind of dismal. That's all you got. I mean, that's what you have. I mean, you have the best of thoughts and hopes, etc. You'll name them Matthew, Paul, or maybe, Sarah or Rebecca, because you want this child to emulate people from the Bible, especially as a Christian. So you have potential, but you really have no idea. Your child may choose to go off the rails of the faith and go his or her own way. Absolutely, that happens, and it's a tragedy, but it does happen. But for the honorable person, it's a celebration. You can celebrate this person's life because of what they've done, and you see the people who have been influenced by this individual, and it's a celebration, it's an honor, as well as an honor when that person enters into heaven and receives glory. So mourning is better. It says, now mourning is better. It's better to go into a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. Now why is mourning better? Because let's face it, none of us, especially guys, like to be in mourning. I'm really disgusting when I'm a hot mess mourning. Julie, I see that hand. To live as Christ and to die as gain. Okay. Why is it to go into a house of mourning would be more beneficial to us than to go to a house of feasting? Dave. Right. Okay, good. Bill. Yes. Okay. Okay. Daniel. Say again. Is that right? Oh, gotcha. All right. That's crazy how that works. Now, I don't mean to be a stick in the mud, of course, because in Ecclesiastes 3, it says there's a time for everything, and a time of feasting is one of those things. So, absolutely, we should have parties and gatherings and celebrations and that kind of thing. But when you're at these gatherings, typically, as Dave kind of alluded to, you're living for the moment. Maybe you're just having fun with friends, and that's fine, too. I mean, I've been to some parties where we've had some very profound discussions, and I went away really thinking. But if you think about a typical party, especially, people who don't know Christ, it's nothing like that. Usually it's just a lot of frivolity. As Bill says, as time goes on, the volume has to go up higher and higher, right? Because people get a little loose and that kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily make a positive impact. But when you are in the house of mourning, a funeral, all of a sudden everything comes into perspective a little bit more. That's one of the ways I think that God uses to incorporate Psalm 90, verse 12, which is the Psalm of Moses. Teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. You're looking at that casket or whatever the situation is. It might be an urn, and that's you. And who knows when it's you? You really don't know. You could be on your way home from the funeral, and that could be you. So it really brings things into perspective. Letter D there, we see laughter fades quickly, which it does, but sorrow impacts. So laughter, we should be, I'm a person of laughter, as most of you know. I have a bit of a humor. I'm a bit of a ham up here sometimes, maybe too much, you know. And laughter for the class hopefully is a vehicle whereby we can keep our attention going, especially today, you know, after losing an hour of sleep. But it has, Eric's been, but it has limited value, whereas sorrow leaves an impact. From which type of situation do we tend to gain the most benefit spiritually? Is it hard times or good times? I notice there's hardly any hesitation. Hard times, right? But what kind of times do we want? Good times, right? I mean, let's face it, we do. I know that James says we should, you know, rejoice, and we should rejoice. Because, you know, John MacArthur says adversity is a much better teacher than pleasure, and it's true. We learn more from adversity than we do from pleasure and good times. Go ahead, Steve. Okay. Okay. Mm. Good. That's excellent. Good distinction. Appreciate you saying that. We also see in verse 4 that the wise want more wisdom. Okay, and it says, the mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. Fools live lightly, typically, and the wise want more wisdom. Now, one thing that I've noticed over the years is, and I'm sure many of you have thought about this, if not all, our society has done a wonderful job at sanitizing death. You know, it is very possible for you to go your whole life and never see a dead or dying person. I mean, because what do we do with our people that are dying typically? Whisk them away to a hospital or maybe to a nursing home. Now times are changing in a good way. You know, you have hospice where the people are allowed to remain at home and that kind of thing. And that is fantastic. That is much better. But, you know, in our culture and society, we can live without ever seeing that. But I have to tell you, at moments when you either see somebody die or a body after death, it's very sobering. I've seen multitudes of people that either die in my presence or are dead, and it's sobering because you look at that and you say, that's me. The only question is when. That's me. So the house of the wise, it doesn't mean that they're killjoys and they're just depressed, but they try to keep in mind, Lord, teach me to number my days, because I'm going to be there one of these days. And I don't want to mess up. One of my prayers right now is, Lord, please don't let me be a foolish old man. And I mean that. You know, don't let me shipwreck all that you've done, all the grace you've shown me. Don't let me blow it now. You know, stay focused on the fact that it's only a matter of time and I get to stand before the presence of God. Let's take a look at the next couple verses there. Verse 5. It's better to listen to the rebuke of a wise man than to listen to the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorn bushes under a pot, so is the laughter of a fool. And this too is futility. For oppression makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. So we're looking at wisdom and foolishness here. So it says, listen to rebuke rather than songs. Songs, especially in pop culture, don't exactly give you a moral compass. They don't impress you with deep words and deep thoughts. You don't come away with, I want to be just like that, typically, you know. However, a rebuke from somebody that you respect, or especially a godly person, can truly make a significant change. It talks about laughter. Laughter is like crackling thorns. Well, I mean, most of us have had campfires. You put in some thorns or something like that. They make a lot of noise. They flare up and they're gone real quickly. And laughter is like that. Laughter doesn't leave a great impression for a period of time. It just flares up and it's gone. Oh, good point. Oh, nice, good. He says it also creates sparks, which can create more fire, more problems. So excellent, good job. Didn't think about that. Early in my career, I received a very significant rebuke. I'd just gotten promoted to a company officer with my engine company, and we had a call to a very serious car accident on I-5. It involved multiple vehicles, and the short report was there's people everywhere, which is kind of bad. So we're responding to this call. There's 2 or 3 engine companies. There's a medic unit and that kind of thing. And so I get on location and I jump out, and we all go to different patients, which is the idea to kind of ascertain how things are. So I jump down beside this woman, and I put my hands over her head to keep her head from moving, which is also typical. And as I did this, I heard and felt crepitus. Now what crepitus is when bone rubs against bone. So I'm thinking to myself, she has a broken neck. So immediately I break out into a cold sweat thinking, oh my goodness, you know. So I said, well, can you move your hands? She can move her hands, she can move her feet. Oh, thank God. Do not move at all. Now, in the meantime, my radio is cracking. You know, engine 5-3, what's your location? Engine 5-3, where are you? I'm thinking, you all got to figure that out yourself. I'm busy. There's no way in the world I'm taking my hands off this woman's head at this point, you know. So my other troops got there. We got everybody taken away, and everybody did great. She wasn't paralyzed, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But one of my favorite officers, Lauren, he pulls me aside after the call. He says, and by the way, this officer, a highly respected officer, I worked with him for years and years, and he never would rebuke anybody. He didn't have a bad word for anyone. He got in my face. He says, when you get on location of a serious car accident on the highway, you better let us know where you are, because we have no idea, and we want to get you help. It's like, you know, and I started to explain what the no, before you even get out of that engine, you let us know where you are so we can get you help. My rest of my career, another 17 years, I always did that. That rebuke, I mean, I could have pushed it away. Don't you understand? No, he understood. But how can he help me when he has no idea where I am? So the rest of my career, anytime I'm on the freeway, where am I at? And that's the first thing I did. So a rebuke makes a big difference versus laughing about situations, which sometimes we would do as well. Oppression and bribes, verse 7. Now this is the most challenging verse in the whole section because it almost doesn't seem to belong. Now I know it does belong, but when I'm reading through this, I'm thinking, boy, this is kind of strange, because it seems like it could go from verse 6 to 8 just fine. Crackling of fools and the end of the matter. But in the middle of that is, for oppression makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Most of my time studying has been grinding on those verses and figuring out what exactly and how does it fit. It does kind of fit. So I'm not sure if this applies to the man back in chapter 6. Maybe he was a person who took part or received oppression. I don't know. But there's 2 ways to look at oppression. You can look at oppression as a victim of it, or you can look at oppression as a perpetrator of it. So is this individual a victim of oppression, or is he a perpetrator of it? And we're going to look at it from both perspectives because they both can fit. How might being a victim of oppression drive a wise person insane? You're a wise person, you're being a victim of oppression, it's driving you crazy. Why? Okay, you're used to things going a certain way, and now they're not. Okay, Dave. Okay, good. I see another hand over here. Yes, Natalie. Okay. Okay. You look a little deeper than maybe just somebody who's doing a widget. Okay, I'll do 2 widgets or whatever. Okay, good, good. Anyone else? Oh, Mark, go ahead. Okay, you're trapped. You know what justice looks like, but yet you can't get it. It drives you crazy. You know, we looked a few weeks ago at Solomon in chapter 3, verse 16, where it says, he went to a place of justice, I assume the court area, and he saw wickedness there. And the way the Hebrews constructed it makes it sound like a surprise. I was surprised to see that, you know. A wise man, again, what you folks said, a wise man knows how things should work, and it's burdensome to a wise person to see things twisted. It's burdensome to see, wow, why are you doing this? You're just hurting yourself and you're hurting everybody else. And it can drive a wise man crazy. But there's even more. There's a story at one of the concentration camps in Germany. There was a German guard talking to another guard, giving him instruction. And he's telling him how you can drive people insane. And he says, well, what do you mean? So, well, let me show you. So he has a big pile of dirt, and he tells one of the Jewish inmates to come, and I want this pile of dirt transferred over to the end of the camp over there. So he gets a wheelbarrow shovel, and he gets it over there. And then when he's done, he walks over, I want you to take this pile of dirt and put it right back where it was before. Back and forth, back and forth. And in no time at all, the person goes nuts. This makes no sense. This is not even busy work, right? This is work designed to destroy a person's self-esteem. Senseless oppression can do that to a person, and you don't have to be terribly wise to have oppression like that destroy you. It berates your humanity, your ability to think. It's made to make you a victim. Now, let's turn it around a little bit, because it could also mean, because of the second part of the verse, a perpetrator. Now, if a wise man becomes a perpetrator of oppression, it can have a serious effect on him. Now, how might that work? How might this wise person decide to be an oppressor of others? And how would that affect him? Jen. Okay. Okay. Good. I mean, good thought. Julie. Mm-hmm. 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 Right. If you're being oppressed. Yes. Okay. What Jen mentioned, I read the biography of Frederick O. Douglass, who was a black slave who escaped, and he wound up coming up north, and he wound up doing most of his life. He did speeches in the north to eradicate slavery. That's what he wanted, because he was a former slave. And he mentioned in his biography that he had seen firsthand that people who would truly be Christians, and as they interacted with their slaves, including things like corporal punishment and that kind of thing, it actually had an impact upon them, making them less and less human per se, and less or more oppressive, that kind of thing. Go ahead, Peggy. True. That is true. A truly wise man cannot be bought because he knows better. Okay, good. Yes, Steve. Yeah. It says a bribe corrupts the heart. Now, that's not hard to imagine. It's not hard to imagine a bribe corrupting the heart. Interesting thing, too, what Steve was talking about, in our prosperity, we expect this and that. Sometimes in our prosperity, we're more greedy than people that are not in prosperity. We want more because, after all, whatever we have is not enough, right? So sometimes, we're just as likely as a culture to accept bribes as maybe a culture that's not quite as prosperous per se. It corrupts the heart. How does one undo that? How does one undo a bribe? Okay. Mm-hmm. Very good. I didn't think about that, but you're right. My answer was you really can't, but you can kind of by becoming a believer, by making restitution. You can kind of undo a bribe. But if you don't go through that conversion process, it's virtually impossible to undo a bribe, because what happens is the person comes up to you again, offers you another bribe. What do you say? No, I can't take that. Well, you took the first one, and he knows you took the first one. That's where blackmail comes in. Now you're stuck. If you've never taken a bribe, kind of like what Peggy talked about, a wise person won't. If you've never taken a bribe, you never have to worry about taking a bribe. You can always say no. But if you've taken one, but you already did, now you're in a world of hurt. In the Bible, there was one person who took a bribe who tried to give it back and wasn't successful. Do you remember who it was? Judas. Oh, I've betrayed a person. He has clean blood. What is that to us? That's your problem. He couldn't, even though he gave the money back, he couldn't undo what he did. A bribe does corrupt the heart. And a bribe also can lead to oppression of another, and almost always is leading to the oppression of another, because it may involve being in court, and they're going to rule in the favor of you or your friend because you gave them money, which means the other person who may be right is being oppressed. He's being denied justice. So a bribe can do much more than that. That's just a court. Take into consideration people who offer millions of dollars if you'll accept their whatever it is, accept their plan for this, accept their pharmaceutical thing, accept this and that. Bribes can take all sorts of different avenues. It's not just in court, but it definitely corrupts the heart of, well, the giver and the receiver, really, right? Self-reflection, verse 8, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit is better than haughtiness of spirit. Do not be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. Do not say, why is it that the former days were better than these? For it's not from wisdom that you ask about this. So, verse 8 kind of echoes verse 1. Verse 1 talks about the day of death being better than the day of birth, that kind of thing. Well, this is talking about the end of a project or a matter, you could say, is better. The end is better. Or maybe it's a situation that comes to an end. Dumb question, but why is it better? Why is it betterer for my English majors? Problem solved? Okay. Project is done. Peggy? Satisfaction of the completion of a project. Good, good. Others? I thought. Dave? Mm-hmm. Okay, good, good. For most people, starting a project is pretty easy. What usually happens, you get toward the middle of a project. I got other stuff to do. It's kind of hard to persevere through that middle. Go ahead, Natalie. Okay. Okay. Evaluating what you did, taking satisfaction in the project or whatever it is. Okay, good, excellent. To reach the end also requires patience, right? There again, usually midway through a project, we tend to get kind of bogged down. There's other things that come up. It's hard perhaps to persevere. However, to reach the end also builds patience. So not only does it take patience to reach the end, but also it builds patience in you as you're pursuing the end of a goal. Rarely do significant things get done or accomplished quickly. Usually requires a lot of time. And some people don't have a lot of patience to begin with. You know, most of you know I have 10 children. And some people, when they find that out, say, you must be such a patient man. No. See, the reason God gave me 10 children is to make me average, like the rest of you. I had no patience. But after number 7, 8, 9, okay, maybe a little bit of patience, you know. It does build patience. And on the other side, you see your children growing up, and for the most part, you say, you can be satisfied. You know, you can say, I did certain things right. Sometimes my children remind me when I did things wrong. I call those my golden moments, when I didn't do it exactly right, you know. But it builds patience to do these things. In verse 9, it talks about frequent anger. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill. Mm-hmm. People who don't have kids are an expert on kids. Okay. That's true. Oh, good point. People who don't, or maybe it's not even kids, maybe it's just something else. You know, people don't have your perspective, see what it takes to go through, and so they don't have the appreciation. You know, that perhaps they're judgmental or something like that. Another thing that I did to show my lack of patience is, you know, I have a Bible degree, a 4-year degree. I crammed it into a 10-year program. No, you heard it right. I crammed my 4-year degree into a 10-year program. I am a high achiever. Okay, God built lots of patience. Now I'm average like pretty much everybody else. Okay, thank you. Frequent anger is indicative of foolishness. Why is that foolish? I mean, we have certain personalities. Some people are given to maybe a short fuse. Some people can light off easily. Why is becoming angry a lot foolishness? Peggy? Yes, it does. Anger resides in the bosom of a fool. You're exactly right. Mindy. It's just being rash. Okay. Somebody else have their hand up? Yeah, Mark. Doesn't accomplish anything. It can get you in a whole lot of trouble. Right? I read an article not too long ago. There was a fellow who was sent to jail for road rage. And he was there for a long time. He got out, and within a matter of a few days, he was shot and killed during a road rage incident. He road raged on the wrong person. Okay? So there's a case of foolishness, and that's why. Because things like that can happen, and you don't see it coming until you see the bright flash, as it were. Jen, go ahead. Exactly right. Our anger doesn't produce the righteousness of God, and that isn't just here, but that's just in general. Just controlling our temper is just huge. Excellent stuff. And also sometimes anger is a response when we don't have the patience. when the kid you're raising or whatever, it's like, you get angry because maybe you're lacking patience, and the Lord's building that patience again. Okay, discouragement. Says, the question is asked, why is it that the former days were better than these? Has anyone said something like this before? Or maybe how many times have people said this, right? I mean, it's human nature to say that. Were they better? Were they? Peggy. Hindsight can be blurry. Good. Okay. Butterflies and unicorns. Don't forget them. Others? Eric. It is. Until you get over there and see it's crabgrass. Right? Dave, sorry. That's right. Because the wise would say, I don't think so. Right? You know, this is actually kind of indirect complaining, isn't it? Depending on your attitude. You might be indirectly complaining to God about the way things are, or complaining to somebody else about the way God has it. Now, there was somebody in the Bible that was really, really good at this, indirect complaining. Does anyone remember who it might have been? Or group of people? How about the Jews, right? As they are being led across the wilderness. Now, I give them credit, okay? I'm not just going to thump on them because they're going through a wilderness. They have water problems, food problems, all this other stuff, which they've never encountered before. However, they had a way of indirectly complaining. I remember Egypt, where we had cucumbers and leeks and fish and all the food we wanted. And you were slaves. Well, yeah, but I mean, we had, right? So our reminiscing can be a little skewed, as was just mentioned, as Peggy mentioned, right? I mean, we look at things, and it's good to see the good things, but also, you know, it may not be better than the present days. But then again, it may be. But wisdom doesn't dwell in the past. A person who is dwelling in the past to reminisce always how things were better, that person's not wise, because they're looking toward the past. Now, as a wise person, you do look at the past because you want to derive lessons from these things. You don't want to repeat the stupid things you did a few years ago. You know, you still got those scars. You don't want to do that. But you don't dwell in the past as if that's all there is. Plus, wherever you are now, if things are really bad, and, you know, look into the class, there's probably three of you that are really having some tough times. And by the way, if you are, I commend you for being in class, because when you're having tough times, it's easy to retreat to your you know, man cave or woman cave and just, you know, sulk. So I appreciate you being here. It won't always be like this. Okay? I read a book by John Piper many years ago. He's kind of gone off the rails a little bit recently, but at that time he wasn't. And he said that whatever situation you're in, it probably won't always be this way. In fact, more often than not, 5 years from now, it'll be significantly different. Statistically, 5 years from now, it'll be a lot different and probably better. We kind of commiserate with how bad things are, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be that way, you know. And anyway, the Lord has us there perhaps to teach us whatever it is He wants us to learn. Go ahead, Steve. Uh-oh. Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. Right. Thank you. That's good. That's put very well. You're exactly right. God is sovereign. He's put us there. Very good. Let's take a look from verse 11 here. It says, wisdom along with an inheritance is good, and an advantage to those who see the sun. For wisdom is protection, just as money is protection. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the lives of its possessors. Consider the work of God, who is able to straighten what he has bent. In the day of prosperity, be happy. But in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man will not discover anything that will be after him. So we see in verse 11 that wisdom plus an inheritance is good. It's called the advantage under the sun. You have money, and now you also have wisdom to know what to do with that money. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to invest it? Are you going to give to the kingdom of God? What are you going to do with that money? Your wisdom helps you to use it. It says also that both are protection. Now, money can be a protection against hard times. You know, you have savings, something bad happens, you can go to your savings and take care of it. Other things, you can use money as a protection, insurance and that kind of thing. But it says that wisdom is better. It says that wisdom preserves the life of its possessor. How is it that it preserves the life of its oppressor? Possessor, sorry. And money doesn't necessarily. Wisdom can preserve the life, money maybe not so much. Any thoughts on that? Okay, you apply what you've learned from somebody else and you'll be preserved wisdom-wise. Okay, good. Aaron, yes, go ahead. You say it one more time, Aaron. Right. Right. Our purpose isn't to have money and have an easy life. Our purpose is to live for the Lord and go to heaven. Mark. Ah, good. In theory, you won't lose wisdom, but you can lose your possessions. Good. Dave. That's funny. They can afford to do weird things. That's good. The rest of us wouldn't do. You're going to do that? Really? Okay. Another thing, too, is money can make you a target. Somebody finds out that you're very wealthy, there are certain nefarious people who are going to go, oh, really? And perhaps you're a target because you're known to have money. If you're known to have wisdom, you're less likely to be this kind of a target. And also, if you're known to have wisdom, you might be able to foresee things happening and be able to avoid these things from happening. So I think that's a big reason why wisdom is much better than money. And we also see, as Steve alluded to, in verse 13 there, God is sovereign. And we're given this illustration, who can straighten what God has bent. If God does something, we're not going to walk in and undo it unless he says that this to happen. You can't straighten what he has bent. He's completely sovereign. So in that instance, you might want to think about working with him rather than against him. Rather than trying to beat your head against the wall, maybe you should try to build the wall or whatever, right? So work with him rather than against him. And also verse 14, God makes both prosperity and adversity. Both things are allowed or even ordained by God to occur within our lives. God made them both. It says, enjoy life when things are good, but when things are less than good, reflect on that. Do some self-reflection. Think about it. Why is it this way? What can I learn from this? What can I take away from this kind of thing? You know, to really focus when things aren't going quite so good. And in verse 14, it says that we probably won't understand. Man doesn't discover anything. We don't understand why God does a lot of the things he does. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we look back on our life and go, oh, that's why that happened, because of this. But I think that most events, we don't know why. And Solomon didn't know either. He wrote the whole book. I don't know what's going on under the sun. That's what the whole book of Ecclesiastes is about until the very end, when he finally does focus what's important. We need to play the hand that we've been dealt to the glory of God, and also to learn as much from it as possible. Another consideration, and with this I'll be ending, is our kids are learning by watching how we act or react when things are good and bad. Our kids are watching. What are they learning? Are they learning the proper way to respond, the proper thing to do? Because they're going to turn around in 2 weeks and they're going to be exactly there. And how did my dad do it? Now, hopefully they could say, my dad did it this way, and that's the way I want to do it. And said, I would never do that. You know? We're an example either way. We're a good example or a bad one. Well, let's hope that we're being a good example in how we're dealing with good and bad times. Any final thoughts before I go into overtime? Jim? Baffled. Yeah. Good. Good. Thank you. Let's close. Lord, we thank you so much. We can share time together. We could converse. The class is kind of almost becomes like a living organism here, Lord, as we discuss things and talk about things, and we all learn together, and I thank you for that. And Lord, I pray that you might knit your word into our hearts and lives, just like threads of gold, that we might live a life of value before you and honor your name. Lord, please be with us in the next service. I pray, Lord, that you would be with the pastor. May he preach your word with zeal and confidence and power. And for the worship team to lead people's hearts to you, Father, to be willing to worship. And also, Lord, I do want to remember our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, in that area, who are going through some very, very heart-rending times. Please be with those that are our brothers. Give them strength and give them direction. Also, may the gospel of Jesus Christ go forth in spite of circumstance, that your name may be glorified. In Jesus' name, amen.